Welcome to Defense Thursday. My name is Abigail Baker. I'm the CEO of Recon Night Tactical Defense. I want to start with a brief story, and then I'm going to introduce our panel to you and let them share their journey, their path. They have way more expertise than I do, and I'm excited to have them over the next hour. If we do go over, feel free to stay. If you have to go, feel free to go. I'll go ahead and distribute a link to this video afterwards if you miss anything. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we will get to those. Now, on a high-speed train en route between Belgium and Paris, a gunman armed with an AK-47 and Luger pistol emerged from the restroom on the train. Now, if you were in this situation, what would you do? Would you run? Would you hide? Or would you fight? And what situational criteria might dictate when you do what and in which order? In this scenario, one of the three men involved in the counterattack against the gunman suffered from a gunshot wound to the neck. Now, something else to think about is, in addition to running, hiding, or fighting, if you had the opportunity, do you know how to stop the bleed, especially from a wound to an artery? Now, thank you so much for joining us for a very powerful hour of expert discussion about the effectiveness of the run, hide, fight protocol, and also just a general discussion on how everyday people can and should utilize this framework mentally and physically and just increase your personal safety practice. Now, I want to introduce our expert panel today. Up first, we have Faye Coffield. Faye is the president of Faye Coffield Investigations, LLC. She is a retired Atlanta police sergeant, and she's also an international solo traveler. Thank you so much, Faye, for being here with us. Sylvester Pierce is the president of Spears Consulting. He's a firearms and survival thought leader. He's a Stop the Bleed trainer, and he's also a seasoned martial artist. And if I miss anything, Sylvester, please fill us in the next few minutes as I let you all do your introductions. We also have 9-time world champion and grandmaster Steve Muhammad. Steve is a U.S. Marine. He's a Vietnam vet, an LAPD veteran. He's the co-founder of the Black Karate Federation and the creator of the Ken Wing Tai Ba martial arts. I'm so excited to have all three of you here today. And the first question that I want to put out there for all of you, let's go ahead and start with Faye, is tell us a little bit about what got you to where you are right now. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I always had an interest in justice, criminal justice, however you want to put it, the justice system. At the time, I couldn't go to law school, so I became a criminal justice major. I joined the Atlanta Police Department because at that time, it was one of the most progressive departments in the country. It was under the leadership of Dr. Lee P. Brown and Dr. George Napper. I stayed there and I retired. And shortly before retiring, I met a private investigator that was doing, back his name was Wantani Taima, and he is probably one of the best investigators out there. And he got me interested in private investigation. I specialize in issues involving criminal defense, police procedures, interpretation, civil and human rights, and political issues.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that introduction, Faye. Sylvester, why don't you go next? What got you to where you are right now?
Peace to everyone. My name is Sylvester, as Abigail so nicely put it. I got into it because I saw that there was a lack of self-preservation within our community. When I say our community, I mean of Black people, those who look like us, and those who live in our neighborhoods. It was too often assumed that we had enough resources from police to protect us. Then in situations where we felt that the police departments would protect us, it did not always work that way, between lacks of communication and a few other issues. Then assuming that there was enough response from emergency services to help us when need be. So between Trayvon Martin, between the tragedy of Katrina, between just looking and seeing that if we don't start helping ourselves, we can almost eliminate ourselves. And it would be better to understand how we can help ourselves so we could then help these emergency services so they wouldn't be overloaded when there's a real emergency. So I started learning Stop the Bleed, became an instructor, CPR, first aid, AED, wilderness first aid as well, firearm safety, firearm instruction. And then with self-defense, I got into more martial arts. And I must say, there is no way in the world I can be called seasoned when I get to be on a screen with Grandmaster Muhammad. Your name holds so much weight. I'm sure you know that. And everyone that has ever taught me, especially my Black senseis, have mentioned you and have learned from you. It is an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sylvester. We're all honored to be in such a great space with so many great and talented people. Grandmaster Muhammad, it is your turn. We'd love to hear from you. What got you to where you are right now?
Say it again.
So what got you to where you are right now in your life? I know you're focused on teaching, but you've had such an incredible journey to literally this point in time. What got you there?
Well, I graduated from high school and I went to Kansas University. At Kansas University, me and some of the guys on the football team got in a fight. And so the police came, and to make it short, they told me that either I can go to jail for 4 years, or I can go into the military for 4 years. And I opted to go into the military, even though they couldn't have done that. I just didn't know. But once they made me sign the papers, then I had joined the military. And they put me in the Marine Corps. And in the Marine Corps, I spent 6 years, 8 months. I did 18 months in Vietnam. I came back and joined the police department because I only knew about military types things from getting out of high school going into the military. I stayed in the police department, LA County, for 27 years. I left LA County and I moved to Georgia. That's where I met Faye Coffield. And we started working together and doing protective service on a United States congressperson. I believe you might know her. It's Cynthia McKinney. Before that, I had did protective service with Wesley Snipes for 10 years. So I did about 10 years of protective service. And I started training in the martial arts while I was in the Marine Corps. And I've been in the martial arts now for 60-some years. And I'm what is known as a CJO, which is a founder or creator of your own martial science. And this was given to me by the martial arts community. And within that science that I created speaks a mathematical fighting language. And if you want to get into it more, I will be able to do that later. But it speaks a mathematical fighting science that can be actualized, 100% true, accurate, and precise, that has the ability to speak a water language of pure fluidity and natural freedom by flowing, shifting, changing, and creating, which is adaptability. It has the ability to flow, shift, change, and create. But it also has the ability to seek and conform. Seeking is offense, conforming is counter offense. And there's a lot more. But,
So why don't we get into kind of because one of the many reasons I wanted you on this call is to apply that science to kind of run, hide, fight, and how we're protecting ourselves every day. So let's dig deeper into that. Let's jump into our analysis of the run, hide, fight protocol. This is an FBI protocol that dictates running, hiding, and fighting is the best way to meet an active threat. But to really visualize what that looks like, especially on a plane, on a train, in an airport, sitting at your desk, in a classroom, in a grocery store, in so many different scenarios, really requires spending more time thinking about our relationship with violence, with meeting an active threat, what we know about directional movement, and there's so many other things that we need to think about. It's not something that you can hear and understand how to utilize immediately, and that's what I really want us to talk about next. So let's start with Sylvester. Talk a little bit, just give us your reactions to the run, hide, fight protocol, and let's talk a little bit about, you know, some things that are obvious, but also the things that aren't obvious to the everyday civilian when we think about trying to apply this protocol in an active threat situation.
I like the example you opened up with. In part of my, I don't like calling it mass shooter, I call it mass threat training. That same example is used of the attack that was on that train. What do you do? Run, hide, fight is perfect on paper for people that understand and train with it. As long as you understand that you can run from a threat if you have time to do so. You can hide from a threat if they haven't already seen you. You can fight the threat if you have the mentality, the physical ability, and the wherewithal to say, I'm going to take care of you before you take care of me. Then those things are beautiful. But the idea of doing them in order without understanding why each of them is in place, that was when a civilian can be thrown off. It's almost like someone say you go plant seeds in the garden, and you're like, great. So you take seeds and just start throwing them in the field, not understanding that there's a process to it. But depending on how the soil is already made, you can skip some of them or move them around to actually get to your end goal.
Thank you so much for that. So much information for us to think about. Faye, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thought always is that you have to be prepared for every situation, for situations, whether or not anything is happening. That's the first thing. And I think that's what Sylvester is trying to say, is that you have to be prepared. You can't wait until the situation presents itself to decide what you're going to do. And I always use the example of, I had a quick situation. I went to a local sandwich shop. And when I walked through the door, I didn't even get through the door. When I opened the door, I already was assessing what was there. And some people might call it paranoia. I call it staying alive. And I looked, I didn't see anybody behind the counter. So I called out and said hello, and nobody responded. So I called out the second time, nobody responded. And my mind went to a situation that another officer in another department had, where he had actually walked in on a robbery and a sexual assault that was occurring behind the wall. And the perpetrator actually came out. But because you're prepared, you know how to address it. So in my case, when nobody said anything after I said hello the second time, I started preparing myself to meet the threat. That meant I was reaching for equipment that I had that would have stopped the situation. And I was also moving backwards to get out of the situation. I think one of the biggest problems we have is that too many people think that running is the only option. And running is not the option. Sometimes you have to stay still and figure out what you need to do. And that was very evident in the situation yesterday at Kroger, where the woman was confronted when she was putting her groceries in the car. The guy came up behind her, put a gun to her, put her in the passenger seat of the car, and got in her car and started it, actually physically started it and started backing up. At that point, she had a fight, flight, or run. And what she decided to do was to run. But instead of running madly, she opened the car door and rolled out. And then she started running. So I tell people, you always have to figure out what you're going to do. And Steve has already alluded, we work together. One thing we did when we were working, we always knew what our points of entry were, what our points of exit were before we actually got there. And if we got into a strange situation where we didn't know, we assessed it as quickly as possible. But I think a lot of people, they find themselves in situations because they have their heads in the sand and they're not, they're not paying attention to where they are, and they don't have a plan of what they can do to escape, not even what they have on them that they can use.
Exactly. And I have one more question, and then Grandmaster Mohammed, I want to give you the floor, because you're going to be able, I think, to link this into the science of martial arts that you've developed and that you just live by. And Faye, you and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday as we were prepping, but I want people to really understand the different types of violence that they are faced with. I think when a lot of people think about defending themselves, it's, if I'm out at a bar and someone tries to throw a punch at me or someone I'm with. This is not the type of violence that you're going to be faced with. The type of violence is very different most times in these, and you might be facing off with, like you mentioned, the women at Kroger. This could be a seasoned criminal who has had lethal violence committed against them, maybe growing up, maybe through in the prison system, and they are bringing that escalation to you. Right. So just a couple of comments, Faye and Sylvester, about that. And then Grandmaster Mohammed, I want you to speak to this.
Thank you, Ms. Coffield. Speed of violence is real. One of the gentlemen I had the pleasure of working with, we call him Six, Mark James. He always said, once you're in that situation, speed of violence is imminent, and you have to overcome it with more violence when need be. I love that Ms. Coffield said the ingress and egress of everything. That doesn't just mean walking in and out of a building. That might be a situation. And if you prepared yourself to remove yourself from any situation that's happening, you can avoid the violence. However, what you're saying, Abigail, once that violence happens, the turning off that empathy of saying, I'm not going to hurt this person, has to be done, and it's done immediately. Because their whole goal is to eliminate your health and possibly your life. Mm-hmm. There are no other options once you start down that path. So as I tell my clients and my students, whatever happens, I need to get home. I'll talk to God and my parents and my therapist later, but I can't talk to any of them, God, if I'm not here to do so. So right. when they decide they want to engage, and we're at a spot where that hide and that run is now out of the equation, you have to be the storm that is moving through whatever's in front of you to get to your next goal. And your next goal is always survival.
Fantastic. Faye, any thoughts?
Well, he's absolutely correct, because one of the things you learn in Police Academy 101 is that if people will fight you, they will kill you if they can overpower you. And that is why you hear so much about the use of escalating force. And a lot of people don't understand what escalating force is. If you have someone that's attacking you, you may try all kinds of things, but you need to keep escalating the force that you're giving them until you are able to either bring them under control and neutralize the situation, or until someone, something happens that causes them to leave. I always have the theory of, they always tell people, don't scream. And I always say, why would you stop screaming? You always hear that the neighbors call the police because they heard all of this screaming going on. I always tell people, do not leave. If the perpetrator back to the Kroger situation, if the perpetrator puts a gun to you and wants you to leave, you just stand there and you just cut the fool and say, no, I am not going anywhere with you. You're going to have to kill me here. Because 9 times out of 10, if they take you, they are going to kill you. People say, well, they may take me to the ATM. They don't need to take you to the ATM. They can ask you for your password. It's all kinds of force people have to be ready to step up force, to keep going. And I think a lot of people don't, I'm going to say this briefly about guns. Most people don't realize that a gun is designed to kill. It's not designed to scare somebody. It's not designed to frighten anybody. It is designed to kill someone. And if you do not have that in you that you can kill someone, you don't need to have a firearm, because 9 times out of 10, that firearm will be taken from you and then it will be used against someone else. That is one of my pet peeves, everybody that wants to have these cute little guns. But as we said, as I told you yesterday, Abigail, most police officers die with their gun still holstered. And that was the situation yesterday down in Mississippi. They had 2 police officers that were shot and killed, and both of them were shot after talking to the perpetrator for 30 minutes. And then she just pulled a weapon and shot and killed them. I don't even think they drew their weapon. But right. You know, we have to learn, and this is something everybody has to learn. This is not television. This is a real life situation, and you have to fight. You can't be worried about hurting the perpetrator. If you have to stab the perpetrator in the eye with a pencil, if you have to stab them with a screwdriver, if you have to bite them, whatever you have to do, whatever it takes to get them off of you and to decide that you ain't the one they want to mess with.
Great information. Thank you so much. Grandmaster Muhammad, I want to give you the floor. We've talked about a lot, and I'm going to give you the floor to make any comments that you feel are appropriate. You'll have to unmute.
Protective service. The only thing that you have to revert back up to is actually your training and what you have improved on within that training. And you must also listen, like being in combat. I remember being the point man for combat, and I had never been that before. So I wasn't familiar. I was familiar with trying to find the enemy, but not all the things that go on. So I felt something in my heart. I stopped and went back to the lieutenant and said, I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I don't smell anything, but I got feelings. He said, well, we'll go with that. And I said, yes, sir. I use that in every aspect of my life. When I feel that there's something wrong, I'll change the direction of doing whatever I was going to do at that time. So I would say one of the most important things that, remember, that the body speaks to you when there's a problem. Whether you listen to it or not, that is on you, but it does speak. And if you listen to it, you will never go wrong, because that your mind is also the mind of God.
Fantastic. I think, you said 2 really huge things that really spoke to me. One is the only thing you have to lean on is your training in these moments. Mm-hmm. As Faye said, as Sylvester's been saying, you cannot decide in the moment what you're going to do. You need a lifestyle of self-defense and defense thinking that will help you through those moments and achieve that mentality that Grandmaster Muhammad is talking about in terms of allowing yourself to hear what the body is saying so that you can react appropriately. That's fantastic. I want to talk a little bit about first aid training. Faye, if you could kick us off, do you believe that everyone should have first aid training, and to what level and why?
I believe that everybody should be trained up to and including CPR. And I will tell you, and this might sound a bit strange, people don't realize that you can bleed out. We've had police officers to bleed out in less than 10 minutes, depending on how bad that artery was severed. Second of all, you cannot depend on Grady to get there. You cannot depend on being able to. I have had to take officers, as we would say, code 3 in a squad car to an emergency room because the situation warranted it. We hear of people having a heart attack and folks don't know what to do. Everybody, I believe every community, everyone in that community should be trained in basic first aid, including what to do about a gunshot wound. because people don't just get shot by perpetrators. Sometimes they get shot accidentally by themselves or by another person. And for people to just be standing there screaming, call 911 and not able to do anything, it is insane. You know, so my feeling is that every person over 10 years old really should know CPR, because children have done CPR on adults. I believe that everybody should know first aid. And I believe that in your home, you should have basic first aid supplies, because you just never know. It's not complicated. It's not difficult. As Sylvester can tell you, basically what you need for securing, I say securing, but treating an artery that's been, broken and stuff, you can find it. You can use belts, you can use anything. But if people aren't trained how to do it, they don't know how. And I just believe every person should, and Steve will tell you on these executive details, you need to know CPR, because you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Sylvester, I know that you have done a lot of work in the Stop the Bleed space, and you're certified. Can you speak to this as well?
Yes, I just did a free class for the community and was honored to have my first instructor and some EMTs come and volunteer their time. So we got to show the civilian side of the emergency care, and then what EMTs are looking for once they arrive. Our community dies off of ignorance, whether it's ignorance of firearms and what their usage is for, which is always safety, or as Ms. Coffield said, seeing someone dying and just calling 911 or screaming for help, or as so people have been doing lately, recording it and posting it, instead of using that same energy and skill to save someone. I think each and every person should know CPR, first aid, and how to use an AED. They should all know the basics of stopping the bleed, understanding just keep the blood inside the body while you're calling 911 and while help is coming. My goal is to get the funding so that I can teach every person in my community for free. Every person can get a IFAC, which is an individual first aid kit, know how to use that first aid kit, and then also know how to improvise so that if you don't have one on hand, you can do some basic things with what you have around you. I've been blessed to work on some security details before. And one of the reasons I was brought was because I had an IFAC. And if worst came to worst, there was one person who could do something until emergency help arrived. Everyone should know it. I think it should be mandatory. It should be taught in every school.
Fantastic. Grandmaster Muhammad, I want to give you the floor to comment on this and also just talk about, as we kind of move to the close of our session, everyday safety. What should people know to, again, live a lifestyle of self-defense? Oh, you might have to mute.
To you, I would say mine, as you walk around. You can walk around sometime and just not be conscious of what's going on around you. But in this time that we're living in now, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. So it's up to you. No, unless you go to a school and someone teach you, it is up to you. It's like, for instance, a woman, she should never be walking if she's getting ready to go to her car without her car keys in her hand, and the key that opens the door is in the position to be able to open that door immediately and right away. She should also have some type of weapon with her as she's walking. And it doesn't have to be a gun, it doesn't have to be a knife. It can actually be a comb that you comb your hair with. And women carry those things in their purse, the fingernail comb, even hairspray, spray it in their face. You have weapons on you that you carry all the time. You just never think of it as being a weapon, but it is. And if someone, like I told this lady one time in training, I said, she's saying, people are always bothering me. I said, get a whistle. What do you mean get a whistle? What am I going to get a whistle for? I said, get the whistle and blow the whistle when somebody's bothering you. And after that, you yell fire.
Right.
I said, well, who's going to come? She said, wouldn't help be better? I said, who's going to come and help you? You better yell fire. Because they'll come out of their house to see if their house is on fire, but they may not come out of the house to help you. So you want to have something that can make some noise. And I was at the hospital one day, and I was holding a program for the nurses that were there. This nurse went out in the parking lot. This guy approached her, asking her for money. She took that whistle out and started blowing that whistle. I mean, everybody started running over there to see what was going on. And she was screaming and blowing the whistle. And when I got out there, because they had said this incident in the parking lot, so I got out there and she was still blowing that whistle. And what was so funny about it is that when I got to the suspect, he told me, he said, excuse me, officer, excuse me, I want to press charges against her. He said, I can't hear a thing for her blowing that whistle. I thought that was actually excellent. But you should have a way of defending yourself. And you have a way by having a purse that you have certain types of equipment in. I find ladies that carry a knife in their purse, but they carry scissors. The comb that has the point on the end of that comb, you can actually use that comb to actually penetrate the body with that and try to break it off. Once you penetrate the body with it, you can poke, and people say, well, I can't do that. He grabbed you, you take that comb and poke it into his groin area. He'll let you go. But see, a lot of people think, oh, I can't do that. Well, like Faye said, what is he going to do to you? Once he get you where he wants you to go, he can then kill you, do anything he want to do to you. So don't allow him to do that. If you're going to fight, fight where you stand. You don't have to be taken somewhere to fight. And that's what, and take some type of self-defense. Like the brother, I don't know his name, but he has a company and he also has a martial arts school. Go to him, have him to teach you some type of self-defense. A woman can actually learn and develop a fighting science to be able to fight like a man and walk away like a lady. Do you hear what I'm saying?
I love it.
They have to be taught. And when you do that, and I tell them, like the sister said, and she did it. I said, if a guy grab you, knee him in the groin, stomp his foot, poke him in the eye, put him down. And when you do, stomp his legs, stomp his hands. And if you break his foot or break his leg, if he get up and catch you, I said, I'm going to come and take your karate belt off and whip you with it if he can catch you on one leg. So always fight back if you can fight back. And there is a science of fighting that you can develop and make it 100% true, accurate, and precise. And it can be absent of doubt or fear. Once you learn to fight, and then instill in that student the thought of losing, quitting, or having doubt does not exist in my head.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Down my weapon side. I'm going to fight you, and I'm going to let you know. Put my hands up like I'm an expert. I may not be, but I'm going to put them up.
Yes.
And I'm going to fight you. And I'm not going to let you be, I'm not going to be easy for you either.
Exactly.
You in every way and all the strength in which I can muster up.
Yeah.
And I think that women should learn the science of fighting.
Absolutely.
Men too. I think that all of them should be in school someplace. And I can't remember the brother's name, but I believe he said he had a teacher that he has a school or he's going to school or something.
Yes. Yep. And I agree 100% with that. I have been fighting for 8 years across Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, mixed martial arts, Krav Maga, Jeet Kune Do. And you also talked about improvised weapons, which is huge, right? So if you decide to fight, the next question is how, right? And learning about improvised weapons, getting into some type of training, right? Once a week. It really helps you get into that headspace of, if I do have to fight, this is how I'm going to approach it, right? Again, it helps with your footwork, your mental perspective of fighting. It helps you know the body, it helps you know the mind, it helps you know your own will. So I 100% agree with you. Faye and Sylvester, any thoughts? We'll start with you, Sylvester. Just as we wrap up here, personal safety tips, and then also talk about how people can contact you and find you, and share some last tips, and then we're going to go ahead and close the session. Sylvester, why don't you kick us off, and then Faye, then I'll turn it over to Grandmaster Mohammed for final thoughts.
Again, honored to be on this panel with these experts. I've been sitting here learning while I'm talking. You can find me on Instagram at _ the SPS. That's THESPS. That stands for Self-Preservation Society. My website is thesps.org. Final words. Get your body ready to move. Stretch, drink water, try to stay healthy, go hiking, exercise. Don't assume that you're going to rise to the occasion. You're going to fall back on your highest level of training. Once you get nervous, that's where you're going to go. Learn some basic first aid. I teach classes all the time. I'm always willing to teach, and have appreciation for the defensive people in our neighborhoods. It's good to have a chance to speak to Ms. Coffield, someone who's worked with the police department. We don't always get to see a side of the police department in our neighborhoods where they're helping more than the latter. So, and especially with the hospitals we have closing, the one in East Point closed, Grady closed. It's real easy to say, oh, they just closed. I mean, excuse me, not Grady, AMC closed. It's real easy to say that they just closed and we'll keep moving around. But you have huge communities that now have further to go to get emergency care. So take a class. It doesn't have to be from me. Just take it from someone. Make yourself competent so that you know what to do in an emergency, and stay alive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sylvester. Faye, any final thoughts, and how can we find you?
You can find me at Faye, Faye, at Faye Coffield, COFFIELD, investigations.com. But one thing I would like to close on is that my pet peeve, and Steve will tell you, this is one thing we always discuss, is people not paying attention to where they are. As well-trained as I think I am, I do not talk and walk and text. You need, if you're going to text or talk, you need to stop. And me, I stop sometimes and get in a corner or face the wall or something like that, because that's how a lot of people get in problems. They're not paying attention. And we see it all the time on these little cute things where people fall in the street, but you can also get hurt that way. And I'm not going to tell you sometimes people got robbed because they weren't paying attention when somebody walked in with a shotgun. And also the other pet peeve I have is this thing that a lot of people have, and it's most common with women because they have purses, where they have a phone charger, but they don't have any, the phone is not fully charged or it's not at 50%. The two best things you can always have are these. And I brought these, I'm gonna do like Herschel today. These are my props. These are our phone batteries. Okay. They are under $10. If you can see, this one actually has a charging cord in it. And what I do, I keep these in my car. In each one of my cars, I have a fully charged phone charger. I cannot emphasize enough that. And the last thing I have to tell people, know where you are going. Do not depend on Google to tell you how to get there. Learn to read a map. Write down your instructions on how to get there if you have to, but know where you are going so you do not end up someplace you don't want to be. And the most important thing is always pay attention to what's around you and always be prepared for anything that might, always be mentally alert so that you can deal with whatever comes your way. And Steve can tell you
can I add one thing to that?
Absolutely, Sylvester.
May I add one thing to that?
Mhm.
Ms. Cofield, if you can find a solar panel battery charger,
Right.
they cost about the same price as the other ones. But I've taken them and put them on my book bag. I've set them on top of the car. I've used flashlights to charge them up, and then I can charge that directly to my phone. So my other battery goes dead. I still have some more juice, and they're hard. Anything that's hard that's in your hand can hurt somebody. In my self-defense classes, we take those battery chargers and these phones, and they become a blunt object. So glad you brought that up.
You're welcome.
Great point. Grandmaster Muhammad, please take us away. Any final thoughts, prayers, comments to close out today's panel? And how can people find you?
Let me get my hands out of the way here. Living in this society in which we're living in, it is very dangerous. And if you're doing nothing to prepare yourself for anything, and I do mean anything, that is our fault. We should be training our children, or really training ourselves to be able to train our children, because no one's going to train our children the way that we are. I have a 6-year-old that's my granddaughter. She's 7 now. She reminds me of me. And she's taken the martial science, and she's becoming very good at it. I mean, I shouldn't be shocked because she's a chip off the old block like her grandfather. But she's really becoming sharp at it, and she loves it. She said, "Papa, am I going to be able to defend yourself?" I said, "If you can, I'm going to be there to help you, but I'm going to make sure that you're going to be able to defend yourself. I'm giving you something that you can pass on to your family when you get married, if need be at that time." But everybody should be training to be able to take care of themselves, because every time, like when you look at the news, you don't want to look at it anymore. They're killing 10 people, 5 people, 4 people, and they have this program out now, what the police can do to you now, how bad they treat you. I said, look at what kind of world we're living in. So we're going to have to learn to protect ourselves and not depend on anyone else, because sometimes who you think is going to help you can also hurt you. Okay? So you want to be able to protect against anyone that's going to hurt you. But I think that everyone should get their children and themselves in some type of self-defense. It doesn't matter what it is, but at least learn some type of self-defense that you can actually actualize, which means to make it real. And if you can't do that science for fighting 100% true, accurate, and precise, then maybe you need to find another one. Because all of them are made, which our forefathers actually brought into existence. We started the martial science, even though they give it to the Oriental. We were there before the Oriental. It comes from us. So we know how, in particular, if we're taught how to defend ourselves against whomever we need to defend ourselves against. And I'm so thankful for you bringing me on the show today, because I got a chance to see my friend Faye Coffield again. And if I had you by ourselves, I'll tell you some things about her.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear. I've heard some of the stories. I can't wait to hear more. And I'm just so proud to be here. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please take away the things that you've heard today. Don't just hear. Don't be afraid, but act and train and be prepared. We will see you next time.
That's right. That's right.